Welcome to the Refurbishment Mastery podcast with me, Martin Rapley. If you're a property investor who is worried about paying too much for your next property, concerned that you don't know how to manage a refurb, or scared that you will be ripped off by a builder, then this is for you. In this podcast, I share over 30 years of experience of managing refurbishments and conversions to help you make more profit, save your time, and ultimately enjoy the process. On with the podcast. Hi there, and welcome back to this week's episode of the podcast, where I'm delighted to bring you another special guest. And this is a guest, Niraj Shah, that I've known for 12, 13 years or so through property investing, although it was only actually very recently that we reconnected with each other, and Niraj asked me for some support with some refurbishments that he was proposing. And interestingly, this isn't a refurbishment of an investment property, but it was actually a refurbishment of his own property. So in many ways, even more important to get right. Niraj offered to come along and share some of his learning and experience. And actually, we've just had a little bit of a chat about some of that. And I know for a fact there's some great nuggets that Niraj has got to share with you. So thanks very much for joining me today, Niraj. Perhaps you can just introduce yourself and then we'll crack on and talk about your project.
It's Martin, absolute pleasure to be here. And I know just based on the conversation we had that there's going to be so many things people can take away from this and apply to what they're doing straight away. So bit of background, I've been doing property projects for about 12, 13 years. I met Martin around that time as well. And over the years, he's been helpful for the odd bit of advice here and there, and so on. But just to set the scene a little bit, I am not new to property refurbishment. I've done everything from small cosmetic refurbs all the way through to large-scale commercial to resi developments, 13, 14 flats, that kind of thing. But the background to how this conversation came about was, I think a year or two ago, Martin had, or I became aware that Martin had set up his property refurb community, and there was quite a good offer to come into that, but it's still, it wasn't small money. But I came into it thinking, well, I've learned so much from Martin over the years, so what else can I learn from joining the community? Because I knew there was a gap in my knowledge, but it wasn't with anything specific in mind. It was just knowing that I was going to be doing more refurbs, or at least overseeing them. And then unexpectedly, my wife and I ended up buying a place that we thought would take us a couple of years to find the thing that we liked, and we found it quite quickly. So I ended up applying all these principles to the refurb of our own place, which I'm sitting in right now. And Martin's touched on it, but in many ways that the stakes were a lot higher because we were our own client, and this was quite a high-end finish, whereas everything I've done up until now had been mid-range, I'd say, for like tenants or to sell on, whereas this was quite a high-end finish, and we're planning to live here for at least a decade. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing, there's quite a tight time boundary around this because we sold our last place a couple of years ago. We were renting quite happily, so spending quite a lot of money on renting a nice place. And then we bought this new place with quite a large mortgage. So as a result of that, we really wanted to minimize the time that we're paying both rent whilst living in a rental and mortgage whilst owning but not living in the property we're refurbishing. Because paying them both was quite a lot of money. So that was one factor. And the other was that I had a 3-month notice on the rental. So as soon as we'd completed on the purchase, we gave notice on the rental and the clock started ticking. To give an overview of the project, so it was largely cosmetic. So we aren't talking about a big structural project. However, what made it quite awkward, it's a penthouse apartment with underfloor heating with a smart home system already installed. So those factors meant that we basically had to deal with smart home specialists, not standard electricians. And Martin gave me some really good advice around that we'll get into. The flooring was a major piece because it's about a 2,000 square foot apartment and we wanted a consistent floor all the way through. So we had to figure out what we wanted and how that's going to work. And then the other two components was a general builder. So it's too small for individual tradesmen, and I didn't really want to be managing individual tradesmen, but it wasn't big enough to have a QS and a PM. I mean, we're still talking about a multi six-figure project, but it wasn't complex in nature that you didn't necessarily need those. So we were looking for like a decent size general builder who can handle that. And then the last specialist area was the kitchen, which is often the focal point of most homes these days. It certainly was for us. So we were installing a custom built German kitchen, and that required a specialist kitchen consultancy. So that sets the scene. Any questions about any of that, Martin, or where would you like to start?
I think the first thing to say is one of the things I say to anyone I'm working with is you've got to be absolutely clear what you're trying to deliver before you start trying to deliver it, whether that is your own property or a rental property. There's no point in bringing a builder in on day one and then fielding off the questions because you haven't thought it through. And that was the observation when you first started speaking to me. You were absolutely crystal clear. In fact, I know you already had some details when we first started speaking. You were absolutely crystal clear about what you were trying to do. And we started talking about putting together a schedule of works. And I know you took some of my sample templates and molded those into your schedule of works. How did you find that process working in the end? Was that different from what you'd done previously?
Yeah, so I think the point you make is absolutely bang on the money. So that schedule of works became the key document. So in the past, I like when it's been a small refurb, that there's just been a list of things, and we know, this is general building, that's painting and decorating, that's electrics, that's whatever it is. So a schedule of works of sorts. On the bigger developments, there's a PM or someone like that involved who puts the whole piece together, and a quantity surveyor looks for that PM project manager for it. Sorry, trying not to get too much into jargon. Um, but between them, they're dealing with it, and I'm just overseeing it to make sure that this is what we're trying to achieve. But they're the experts. So I've never put together like a detailed schedule of works in an Excel format. So I took Martin's template, and I think the hardest thing with these kind of things is getting started. It's like doing that initial thinking, like getting clear. Well, what is it that we actually want? Like, what are the parameters? But that was critical for this one because, to Martin's point, number one, you don't want to get into chopping and changing midway through a project, and a little bit of that happened because when you start opening things up and start demolishing things and so on, things change, and like there's a bit of problem solving involved. But what the schedule of works allowed us to do, number one, we got clear on who it was we needed. So I mentioned that there were sort of four areas: general builder, flooring, kitchen, and smart home. We wouldn't have known that unless we'd gone through it room by room and said, okay, what are we trying to achieve here? What are we trying to achieve here? That, like, for example, this room, my office, this was already like the previous owner had already installed a custom office. So this stuff here was already here. So this just needed redecoration and new flooring. So the least was done in this room. But the other extremes to that, in the kitchen, we completely ripped out the old kitchen. So all removed, like the kitchen tiles, all taken apart, and everything there is completely fresh. So getting that clarity was super important because then we understood who it is we need to speak to, so we could target those people. But also, when we got into those initial conversations, we're not wasting their time either. Where I think Martin made a really good point. Like I used to be like I used to find it difficult to work with builders, and how do you find someone you trust and all this kind of stuff. And Martin turned that on its head for me and said, well, actually, most builders want to do a really good job. They're just not being given the tools and environment to do that. And when I started taking that attitude out, when dealing with builders, it was like, well, hang on, what am I doing that's not allowing them? Well, what am I not doing that's not allowing them to do the best job that they can do? And I think this schedule of works document is incredibly important. Number one, for that internal clarity. Number two, so that you can have a structured conversation. And number three, we used it as a screening tool as well, because as I mentioned, the timeline in this was tight. So the way we dealt with this is we long listed 40 builders first, because going back to the nuance of this, I figured that if they've got a flashy website, they're probably going to be too expensive. But if they haven't got a limited company, they're going to be too small. So we used that as a bit of a screening tool to get a list of about 40 localish building companies that could potentially do this. But then when we narrowed it down to the 12 that we liked the look of, we got in contact, had a phone call, and said, I'll send you a schedule of works. And if we then had a second conversation and they had clearly had not consumed any of this schedule of works, we just ended the conversation there and then, because we knew this isn't somebody who we're going to enjoy working with.
Yeah, I mean, what you've done there is textbook, to be honest. So, well done for being the perfect student, really. But one of the mistakes I see so many people making is that they're not talking to enough builders, and they're not demonstrating their credibility. We've got our own skills and knowledge as property investors or as homeowners, and if you demonstrate to a builder that you know what you want them to do, and you give them every opportunity to deliver that, and that is that schedule of works, but also then have meaningful conversations with the right builders, you will, by and large, I can't say you won't get the wrong builders or the bad builders, but by and large, you will definitely find the better builders. And as you said, just by sending them the schedule of works, if they haven't read it, that's probably a concern and probably a reason not to continue conversations with them. And you saying there you started off with 40 odd builders, you whittled it down to 12. That is such a good thing to do. I still regularly tender projects to 6 or 7 contractors that have come from a long list of more than double, triple that. And I know lots of contractors, but first of all, I want to be trying lots of contractors. But the only way you're going to find the good contractors is by doing that research. How far out did you actually start looking for those 40 contractors? Was that before you even you started putting the schedule of works together?
Um, yeah, so I'll add, we've moved to a new area, so we didn't know any builders or tradesmen. So I think the concern for me was, we don't want to be getting the keys and then waiting 2 or 3 months to even start the project, because again, in the overall scheme of things, like paying high rent, we've taken a 7-figure mortgage because we could get it at a great rate. So we don't want those kind of overheads hanging over us. So I think the timeline was, we knew that there was a very high chance of us completing because we were direct to vendor for the property. So we basically started that long list process. I gave my assistant a list of, like, here's what we're looking for, and she put a post in a couple of local Facebook groups. Hi, I'm looking for a builder to do a sort of high-end refurbishment. Now, the problem with that is you'll get about 80 replies if you put that in a local community Facebook group, and you'll get very little information. So then she knew that what she needed to do with each of these was to then look these people up, check on Companies House. So she created a spreadsheet of name, number, website, where it came from, and the link to their Companies House thing. And then I'd already briefed her that, if they've got like red flags on Companies House, then just rule them out completely. So that got us a list of, I think we had about 40 entries in, and probably about 15 or so of those were like qualified for what we're looking for. Of those 15, that's when I checked them out, and we liked 12 of them. So we contacted 12 initially, and this was all probably about 2 or 3 weeks ahead of completion. And those 12, we got it down to 6 that were potentials. So within one of the things I'm really proud of, within 48 hours of getting the keys, we'd had all 6 come round. We'd already lined them up. Of those 6, we got we got quotes from 3 of them. So, and this is another lesson that's worth knowing, that not every builder that's going to come around is going to quote for whatever reason. Either they're slow or disorganized, or they're just too busy. Like, Martin, again, you made this point to me so well, that these guys weren't the best at maths and writing. What they're experts at is building stuff. So sometimes, when you get to a bigger level of builder, or building company, they're going to have teams that look after stuff like this, but then you're going to pay the premium to deal with them. And what we were looking for was that sweet spot of really highly skilled, really knew what they're doing, great reputation, all the rest of it, but without commanding the 20, 30, 40% premium that you would have, because it's all presented quite in a slick way. And also, I personally, because I knew I was going to be quite hands-on with this, I effectively was the project manager. I was on site almost every day. I knew I was going to be dealing with them, so I'd rather sort of deal with that type of individual who's very, very good at what they do, and just sort of straightforward, honest people. So yeah, we got so basically 40 went to 12, went to 6, went to 3. And then of those 3, 1 we didn't like straight away, because they're obviously very good at what they do, but they're just a little bit old school, bit set in their ways. And then there was 2 that we really liked, and then we referenced them again. Things that Martin taught me in the past, I would have just asked them for a couple of references and called them up. This time I asked a more specific question, which was, give me the names and numbers and details of the last 2 people you did a job for. And let me know if I can call them up. And the benefit of that is that if you specify the last 2, but by the way, that now when we reference anything, not even to do with property, just in the businesses I'm involved in, we always ask it that way. We always ask the last 2 or 3, not the 2 or 3 that they want to present. 2 things: one, we can see how recent was the work, because if their last couple of customers was a couple of years ago, that's a big concern. And secondly, we're forcing them to sort of tell us what's happened recently, as opposed to showing us their best customers that they want to present. So yeah, that was it. And then where we ended up, the company that we used, we had, it was good. I mean, I can't say the project went without a hiccup, because there's always challenges and problem solving and stuff to do. But it came in on time. It came in over budget, but that's okay. With a personal refurb, we had the ability to spend a bit more, and when we had to make decisions, we were like, okay, we need to optimize this speed, or we want to upgrade that there. But the most important thing, Martin, which again I learned from you, is that we picked the builder that we had the best rapport with. Because if you've got a really good rapport with the builder, and you've done all these other checks, then you can approach problem solving together, as opposed to turning a bit acrimonious, like turning it a bit of a blame game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, rapport is one of the things that I say, because you're going to be working with these people, which in your case for 3 months. Why have a horrible 3 months working with someone that you just can't have a little bit of banter with and a bit of rapport? And we're not talking about, by the way, people that you'd be taking down the pub on a Friday night or anything like that. This is all still a business to business relationship, albeit it's our own personal property. It's still business to business. It was interesting to hear you talk about how you'd outsourced some of the early work to your VA, because just yesterday on our community call, one of the members was asking about typical things that they could outsource to their VA. Did you use your VA any further after that initial outsource, or was there, did they help you put together the schedule of works or anything like that?
Yeah, the schedule of works, no, because there wasn't really much that she would have been able to do, that would have been additive.
Yeah,
But that
that makes sense.
outreach, we couldn't have done it without her, because that volume takes a certain amount of hours to manage and so on.
Yeah.
But also keep we wanted to keep the purchase under wraps in the local community, because it's a very, very desirable property. So we didn't want that getting out. So there was a big advantage there with it being her name and not mine. That went on a Facebook post and stuff like that. And then in terms of ongoing stuff, I'm sure there would have been stuff along the lines of, when we bought the place, we didn't. It was only after we got the keys we realised that as a 12-year-old, because it was built 12 years ago, it's a 12-year-old smart home system. So it's like, oh, hang on a second. So this is all data cabling, not traditional wiring. So then we knew we needed a smart home specialist. So I'm pretty sure I would have said to her, hey, can you just go and find me like the top 10 smart home specialists within a 10-mile radius? So a lot of that kind of initial heavy lifting to then be able to, like, and by finding, it's like get the names, get the numbers, get the websites, check their Google reviews, check their Trustpilot, just see what gets thrown up, and then that was super, super useful. And then there would have been some ongoing support along those lines of, just basically doing a lot of the initial legwork around finding things out. But I'd say my assistant, so it's a personal assistant who works across all of my sort of business and personal projects. Like having that person to do these kind of things has been invaluable.
It was interesting. One of the specific question that came up yesterday was, could I get my VA or my PA to put together my schedule of works? And my answer was, I don't think you can, because I think it's too personal. If you're repeating, if you're doing investment properties and things are very repetitive, you can probably give them some kind of template, and probably give them just some voice notes as to how a particular project starts is going to differ. But I said, I think really you've got to write your own schedule of works. You've got to be using a VA for the research, exactly as you've done, and collation of details, documents. Probably they could do an element of comparison of prices and things like that once that comes in, but probably not the schedule of works.
What you could do, and actually you made another good point with the schedule of works, because we were giving them our schedule as an Excel sheet and just said to them, look, just don't know what template you use, but you can just put your prices in here. And that made it, I think from memory, one, maybe two did it and one, maybe two didn't, but that made it really easy for us to compare stuff. So that's always handy. But the thing that I completely agree, a schedule of works, unless they're on the ground and part of your team and they really understand property and what your sort of investment what your renovation or refurb criteria is, and it's quite cookie cutter, then no. But what they can do is, because you've got the templates and learning modules within your online community, what they could do is you could say, okay, I've done this schedule of works, can you go and review that module and tell me what we've missed? Like that's if they're sort of a mid to high level assistant, that they'll easily be able to do stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah. Some good stuff there. I didn't expect to be talking about that at all, but it's so current, and of course it's good value of your time. And if you're managing multiple projects, then outsourcing tasks like this allows you to have more projects on the go at any one stage. And if you're looking at really ramping up your property investing and developing, then you need to be looking at deals. You need to be out there in the market, not phoning around looking for builders on Facebook, when other people can do that far more successfully. And I know when you then got prices back from builders, and the builder that you were quite keen to work with, there was a challenge around his preferred payment terms. So let's just unpack what the builder was actually after, and kind of how I helped you deal with that.
So I've consistently had this from builders, and I completely understand where they're coming from. Like, typically they want some sort of payment up front, and what they'll say is, we need this to buy materials. And I think that, like, there's some truth in that, but what they're really looking for is a commitment from the customer. They want to know that they're not going to turn up to a job and do a couple of weeks work and then not get paid, and completely understand that. I think this one, their standard terms was something like 30% of the total project cost up front, and but for me, that was just going to be too big. We're talking about tens of thousands upfront for something that hasn't even started. So again, using your advice, something that I've done with individual trades, but I've never done with builders like this before. I went back to him and said, listen, why don't I give you some getting started money? Like, how much do you need to get the materials? And we agreed it was probably a few £1,000s for the first couple of weeks. But I'll pay you on a weekly basis every Friday at lunchtime based on the work that's actually been achieved that week. And we've got this schedule of works to actually tick things off against. And that way, right, we're just paying for it in almost real time, but you've always got enough to pay your people and your trades. And he really liked that idea, and that's what we ended up doing. And you just on a Thursday we'd discuss the project progress for the week and agree what that sum is, and on a Friday I'd send it over. And that did something else which I hadn't really thought about, which I've done with individual trades before. Well, there's two important points here. One is that it created an accountability cadence. He knew we're going to have this conversation every Thursday, so it meant that if they wanted to get paid, well, then they were incentivized to get the job done and get it done properly, not just tick things off. The second thing, and this is what I've known for a long time with especially with individual tradesmen, but with any of these folks who are involved in the building trade, in my opinion, the importance of paying them on a Friday is that if they get paid or they don't, it's a difference between them taking their family out for a meal or the kids to the cinema or something like that, because a lot of the smaller tradesmen live paycheck to paycheck. And I think the first time I did this, which was about 8-9 years ago, I don't know if I even told you this, Martin, it was a refurb we're doing in Canary Wharf, and we brought in a plumber to do something, and I said to him, and this is what I've always said to all my trades when we're dealing with them individually, you invoice me on a Wednesday, and the invoice has to have this, and this. And as long as we receive it by 5 p.m. Wednesday and it's all correct, then you'll be paid at lunchtime on Thursday. Sorry, lunchtime on Friday, which gives us a day to check things and rectify and whatever. The first time, I think we got a emergency plumber round to do something on a Thursday afternoon, and he sent me the invoice that night, and on a Friday we paid it in the morning. And he sent me a text saying, I can't believe how quick you've paid. We normally have to chase that. Like I just really appreciate it. And then we ended up doing a few other bits and bobs with this chap, and he always prioritized our work, or always did it first, because we just had that relationship. And I think that's like,
just jumping in to make sure that you have everything you need. Now, in a number of these podcasts, you would have heard me talk about my community, and I want to ensure that you know how you can join that community. Obviously, within these podcasts, there's a limit to the detail I can go into the recording, and of course, a lot of things are very generic. So what if you had access to join me on a Zoom call for 90 minutes every single week in a group coaching environment? You could get your questions answered whenever they come up and learn from other members' questions. Plus, you also get 10 hours of training videos, an HMO refurbishment case study, some sample documents and checklists that will help you run your projects far more effectively. Membership of my community is just £89 a month. You get the first month free, and you can also cancel anytime after that. Plus, as a listener of this podcast, there's a promo code to help you save £20 every single month that you remain a member. So just make a note of VIP discount 20, VIP discount 20, all in capital letters, and put that into the checkout. You'll find the checkout on my website, www.refurbishmentmastery.com. Scroll down the page, you'll find the link for the Project Management Accelerator. Use the promo code VIP discount 20 and you'll be signed up at just £69 a month. I look forward to seeing you in that community very, very soon. Now back to the podcast.
Wildly important that sometimes as property investors, we can sit in our ivory towers because we used to be paid monthly from our employed job or whatever it is, or the way we pay people in a business. But it doesn't match the reality of how these folks live and the impact it has on them.
Yeah, that's it. And of course, it's not just them that are living hand to mouth, it's the people working for them as well that are hand to mouth. So
Yeah,
even if we don't pay the builder on Friday, he's still got to pay the labourer that's been sweeping up outside and loading the skip and what have you. So money is going from his business. And
yeah,
this comes back to something you touched on earlier on, that these builders predominantly are builders because they weren't good academically at school. So they're not good with their maths, they're not good with their accounts, and you know they're now having to manage their cash to pay their tradesmen or their operatives as well. And there's no reason for us to hold back money. You know, we don't want to be paying them in advance, but if they've done work, they're entitled to money. And in the big wide corporate world where used to work, we were invoicing, or we were valuing monthly. We were being paid 14 days later. So at work for government bodies, we were paid 28 days later if we were lucky and the wind was blowing in the right direction. But that can work in big corporate. Where we are now, we've worked so many times. We're working with smaller contractors. We've got to change our style to suit. And we've just got to remember that these are all humans. You know, builders are humans, and you know, just like us, they want the nice things at the weekends. They've got kids that need to go to football, and you know, they're spending their money. And aside this, they're probably not saving their money as well as we are as property investors. So they you know, when they had that bonus job a few months ago, they've blown that on a family trip to Florida instead of putting it away for a rainy day. So when the rain comes, we've got to be there to help them out. But as you touched on, you will get good service from the guys that you look after. If you look after them, pay them regularly, you'll get a good service from them, and you'll start to get things that they won't even charge you for. You know, if you phone them up with a bit of a crisis, they'll drop everything, they'll run round, sort the issue out, and you know, you'll get the benefit in other ways.
absolutely. And I think what you're addressing here, bigger picture, right? I think there's a bit of a distrust between like property investors and developers and the people on the ground doing the actual building work. And I think where that distrust comes from is this like lazy tropes around, you know, that builders will try and screw you and this, that, and the other. But where I think where it really comes from is the property investor or the person doing the project's lack of understanding of what's required and what's involved. And there's quite an important point around this that I'll come to in a second. And I think again, something you said to me, like it's like we know so many people who dread trying to find new builders and all this stuff because it's like you know, I don't know what my experience is going to be like, and am I going to get screwed? And I think number one, like just upskilling your knowledge. Like we don't need to become experts in carpentry and electrics and stuff like that, but just understanding some of the basics around like what's actually involved is helpful. But number two, it's I've lost my train of thoughts slightly on this. It was yeah, the first one is you know, that lack of trust. That trust flows both ways. From the builder's side, it's like, am I going to get paid? Are they going to be a difficult customer? You know, all this kind of stuff. So I think the point is when you create the conditions for somebody to thrive, as long as you've picked the right kind of person, then who's got the skills and the attitude, they're going to thrive. And I think the majority of builders do actually want to do a really good job, but we need to approach it the way that you've shown me, so that we can take away that lack of trust, and you know, we're working from the same sheet. So yeah.
And really, this comes full circle back to that schedule of works. If you've demonstrated to the builder that you know what you want them to deliver, they've got more chance of delivering what you want. If you say, here's an apartment, refurbish it, well, then that's a grey area, and who knows if you're ever going to be delighted by it. So,
Yeah,
a lot
yeah,
of what I teach is, as get clarity as to what you want and get that knowledge down onto a bit of paper so that everyone else involved, and in this case, it was yourself and and the builder. But in other properties with property investing, could be investors and business partners and commercial finance. All of these
mhm,
people need to know that you know what you're going to do with this
yeah,
scheme, and it just builds your credibility. And then the right people actually want to work with
yeah.
you, even if you make a slip up. You've got kudos because you've had a good attempt at getting it right.
Completely. And the to this point, so once we got into the project, there were some changes because once you start opening stuff up, then you run into challenges, and then you're like, okay, we need to approach this differently. There's a little bit of that, and there's a couple of things that were like, oh, hang on a second, now that we've removed all of that stuff, we'd rather do something like this. And there was two things that made that go really smoothly. The first is the knowledge and acceptance that if you're going to change your scheme, if you're going to change your schedule of works, then you should expect to pay for that. Not for any other reason than if that creates extra work for the people involved. So what we do is whenever there was a deviation from that, we discuss it with them because there was a bit of problem solving involved and there was some stuff that they need to do. We discuss it with them. Okay, how does this impact what you're doing? What does this mean in terms of material, labor, blah, blah, blah? And we'd approach it that way, and there'd be a little bit give and take. But what it also meant is where a couple of places where they made mistakes or they'd misunderstood something, then they would rectify it. So
Yeah,
again, this was for me, this all rectify not at our cost. So this all came down to having that trust that we're not out here to try and screw you, and you're not here to try and have to take some extra money here because you're going to expect to get gouged over there, which I've seen happen a lot.
yeah, yes. And as property investors, if we can find that right builder first time, we're potentially working with them for years into the future.
Yeah,
I look at the projects I've done as a property investor myself. I've only really used two or three different builders over the last 12 years because you build up these relationships, and the right people want to work with you. And whilst there's this perception that, oh, they'll rip you off if you don't get competitive prices and if you negotiate with them, the right builders won't. The right builders will see you as a regular income source, and and be sensible and look after you. So
yeah,
it's a relationship game, but a professional relationship game. And as I said
yeah,
earlier, it's not about going down a pub on a Friday.
yeah. I'll give
It
you. So
oh,
sorry, I'll give you a little anecdote on that because I think there's something quite useful here. When we got the builder we chose, when we got all his prices, they were all there or thereabouts, except the decoration. Decoration was like just seemed out of kilter for me, like which was just basically the painting and finishing and whatever. So normally I might have gone back and said, "Hey, this looks a little bit high, etc., etc." But again, from you, I learned this phrase, which was, "Yeah, we've looked at all of this. That's all fine, but this decoration one, could you just have a look at that again for me, and just double check that you've got that right?" And I think that phraseology is important because, again, they're at the level we're talking about. They're not sort of sophisticated business people who are working out their cost, working out their margin, and putting it there. What they're doing is he's going to his painter and decorator, his preferred one, and saying, "What would you charge for this?" And then he needs to make sure he makes some money on that, and that that's not going to be as slick as what you see in the corporate world. So I just wanted to make sure that like if there was an opportunity for them to look at that again, that they could. But what was quite surprising, he came back and he said, "Yeah, look, Dave, my decorators had a look at this, and that's his price because you've got a lot of high ceilings. There's a lot of complicated woodwork, etc., etc." So he said that is going to be the charge for what he's going to do, but also this guy's a magician. Like this finish will be outstanding, and that was so important. And it was, by the way, like his work is like the kind of person who is so into what they do that their pride is so high. That's what this painter and decorator was like. And again, from past projects, what I've learned is you could do an amazing project, but if the finish isn't right, it just ruins everything. And it's such a shame when you see a building team working really hard. This happened on one of our projects in 2022. Again, quite a sort of mid to high end flat refurbishment in a super affluent part of London. And they'd worked so hard for 3 months and got 90% of it right, but their finish was awful and it just ruined everything. Like it's so again, two things. Number one, the method to check the prices that works out for us because it's always good that they know that you're taking a keen interest in it. But the second thing is, I'd say, if, painting and decorating if is not a place to try and save money
Yeah.
as long as you know it's going to be a good finish. Like whether you're going to be selling on, renting, or living it in yourself, it's wildly important.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about the decorating there, Niraj. When I was managing contractors, we only used to use the same two or three decorators, and that was, I would say, that if you're setting up a painting and decorating business now, breaking into established contractors for work from them is going to be hard because they know that the decorator can conceal every disaster that's gone on beforehand in many ways. Poor plaster, they'll fix it. Timber that's been cut in badly, they'll fix that and paint it. And yeah, so don't cut corners on painting and decorating. But the way you handle that question is, yeah, we're not challenging them, we're just asking them to consider, is it the right price? By the way, you've quoted this at a price and it looks like all the other builders have quoted it quite a lot lower. Can you just double check? It might just be there's a comping error. They've just added something up. They've put an extra zero on something by mistake. And I've had builders phone me up and say, actually, Martin, I have messed this up. I can take this amount off. And it's like, I've got a discount here, probably greater than I would have got if I'd have asked for a discount across the board just by asking them to review it. And it's probably not even the builder that's given the discount. It's the tradesman, the decorator, the electrician, or whatever. So yeah, there's lots of little angles in here. Are there any other little things learnings that you've got from doing this project? You're obviously not going to do your own flat again for another 10 years. So this
Who
is about
knows? Who
applying to.
knows? Who knows? I think I've got one more in me. Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, a couple of things. The first is that yeah, again, bear in mind I was fairly hands-on as the project manager for this particular one. I just made sure I learned everyone's names. Like that was really important. And just saying hello in the morning, when I pop around and acknowledging people, because again, like especially like in these sort of affluent areas with these high-end properties, you just get people who treat tradesmen like dirt, and there's especially junior ones, or they just don't acknowledge them and it can come across as very aloof. So that was one, and the second one is that every Monday morning we just make sure that there was tea, coffee, and a couple of packs of biscuits that are there. Ginger biscuits from Tesco's, 50 pence a pack. The level of goodwill that buys you, like the ROI on that is nuts because it's just being human. It's showing that you actually care. And then once or twice when when the weather was good and we'd seen they'd been working hard on whatever, we just ordered pizzas for everyone. Like it costs almost nothing, but the sheer level of goodwill it creates is so high because so few clients bother with stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it just means that next time you've got an inquiry for a project, that they remember these simple little things, the ginger biscuits and what have
Yeah,
you. So
yeah.
yeah,
And
it's
it's
so easy to do.
beyond. Yeah, and beyond, I've spoken about like the advantages it created for us. It's also just a human thing to do, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
it's the things that we have in our places of work. So why shouldn't they?
Well, and ultimately, you talk about in our places of work. this is their place of work, and for
Yeah.
a 3 month snapshot, we are the managing director of the business, and they're coming
Mhm.
into our business. And so it's no different from if a consultant came into any of our businesses and delivered a project over a time. They would be, they would still get the free cup of tea and the biscuits and the lunch breaks and everything else. And it's so, I
Yeah.
think a lot of this is about that. It's not a them and us. They are coming into our team. They're joining our team of other experts, including mortgage advisors and solicitors and estate agents and what have you. They're coming to our team for a period to deliver part of the project. And the project, of course, is potentially many years long. If we're holding properties, renting them out or living in them,
Mhm.
it's a long-term project, and they're delivering a part of that, but it's got a legacy for that longer term. And if we get that, if we cut corners in the 3 months, we're continually fixing door handles, we're continually looking at some poor quality paintwork, we're continually saying, oh, I wish I'd spent a little bit more on that. And we don't want to be in that position. So thinking it through, planning it, working with the right people. There's some brilliant stuff in there, Niraj. So thanks very much for going through all of that. What are you doing in property at the moment? Are you still investing in property?
Yeah, um I started with putting HMOs together in 2012 in first around the Canary Wharf area, like undervalued areas around there, and then expanded that to Nottingham through working with our mutual friend Dan Hill. Actually,
Yeah.
he was sourcing and managing my HMOs there, but I was quite hands-on involved in their refurb because of what I knew.
Mm.
So that that was the kind of background. In 21 and 22, I actually sold quite a bunch of those, just because I thought the prices being achieved were quite high, and
Yeah.
I always had in my mind that if I can take 6 or 7 years of cash flow off the table, with an exit on that, then I'd do that. So that was quite cool. And around the same sort of time, I kind of stumbled into commercial property, and then my eyes opened up with that. So what I'm doing in property now is actually I'm completely focused on commercial. I found people to source me some deals, so I'm not super involved myself, but everything I know and have learned, it makes me really good to work with for them because they know that I know what I'm talking about in terms of the projects, the finance, the legals,
Yeah.
and all that. And ultimately, I'm the owner of these things, so it's all on me to, it's no good going back and blaming other people when you're the one left holding the property. So yeah, I've got a commercial property strategy now, which I just want to build out over the next few years. But that's all really just to keep building that pot of personal income and keep increasing our personal income that comes from assets over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it for me in property. I think I'll keep doing stuff in commercial and keep changing strategies as they become more popular and as the margins go down, which is what we see happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm seeing more and more people looking at commercial now as a
Yeah.
longer term strategy. And,
Yeah,
and I think there's
I'd
probably
rather
some.
they didn't, but that's
Well, yeah,
well,
absolutely.
if they could wait 5 or 10 years, that would be nice. Yeah,
Yes, I think to some extent, the residential rental market is a little bit, up in the air at the moment, as far as it's not clear quite where the market's going. Mortgages are staying reasonably expensive, and certainly the cost of refurbishment is, skyrocketing, and that's not builders ripping us off. That's building regulations, particularly making things more expensive. So we've got to be much more aware of what we need to do to our properties and make sure that we can add value to our properties. And I think at the moment I'm seeing the market is still reasonably hot. There's still unrealistic expectations from estate agents as to what the value is at the moment, what the end value is, and how cheaply estate agents think you can refurbish a property. So whilst we haven't got those things aligned, things like commercial, could well be a good angle, particularly as you may not need to do any refurbishment to those properties. it may just be a paperwork exercise of repurposing leases, rewriting leases, and repurposing buildings, and let them fit them out. So yeah, that does make total sense to me. So yeah, all good stuff there. Thank you very much. Anything else you want to finish off with? It would be really good if you can just share how people might find you on social media or anything like that.
Yeah, in terms of stuff to share, I mean, like I say, just going back to the start of the conversation, I'm not new to property refurbishment and development. I've been doing it pretty successfully for the last 12 years. I've known Martin for a long time, but I only jumped into like his program like maybe a year and a half ago, something like that, and it just helped me a fill my knowledge gaps, but b give me all these tactical little nuggets that really made a massive difference on this particular project and everything going forward. And I think the other thing is just having access to you. I know you, so I can pick up the phone to you. But even then, I wouldn't, I wouldn't feel good about doing that unless you're getting compensated for that. But just getting some of that bespoke advice from you was really, really valuable. So it was like, well, here's my situation. What do you think? Here's my SOW. What we're trying to achieve. Like, what do you think? So, without wanting to sound too much like an advert for what you're offering, I just think that, like, what it costs versus what you can save or make extra on your first project makes it a complete no-brainer. I think anyone who's kind of involved in refurbishment and development, there's some good stuff in there. In terms of my socials, I think the easiest thing to do is we'll just share those out when you share the episode.
That's all right. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Well, yeah, I mean, thanks for that glowing, that testimonial of what you've got from me. You're absolutely right. It's priced in such a way that it's just a no-brainer to join. But do you know, I'll tell you what frustrates me over the years is the people that tell me they've had a problem, and it's like, if only you'd met me before and I could have just helped you, I could have just steered you in the right direction. I don't mind helping people that have got themselves in a problem. I'd rather get the message out to them before they get in a problem and just give them, the benefit of my what is now rapidly heading towards 40 years of experience of delivering projects. And you can't learn everything from a training course. You can't learn everything on your first project. It's got to be incremental growth as you do things. And I'm here to help everyone. So So thank you very much for that feedback. Thanks very much for joining me here. It's really good. I talk to so many clients and guide them with their projects, but I don't always know the whole story. I get the snippets, I get the questions, but I don't necessarily know all of the background. So it's been really good to hear more about your actual property there. And just to say, even though Niraj was talking about refurbishing his own apartment that he was moving into, the rules, the processes are exactly the same. Understand what you want to deliver, get that down onto paper, vet builders, start off with a long list, engage builders, agree the terms, look after your team, and manage it effectively, and you will have a good project, whatever that aims to be. And I can help you with all of that. So, and it sounds as though I have helped Niraj. So great, and thanks for sharing all of that.
I mean, the final footnote from me is that even though it was our own property, we saved tens of thousands of pounds, like from just if I add up the actual as a pocket cost, and that's before I even get into all the headache and time and all of these kind of things. So it's hard to put an exact number on it, but I can see if we hadn't done things this way, then project might have gone on for a couple more months, and then that would have started getting into a 5-figure cost for us easily.
Yeah, absolutely. So brilliant. Well, good to hear. Thank you very much for that, and thank you to everyone else for listening and joining me. I'll catch up with you on another episode very, very soon. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Please do like, share, and leave a comment where you can. If you need any guidance or advice with anything to do with your refurbishments or conversions, then don't hesitate to reach out. You can book a free call with me by clicking on the link at the top of my website, refurbishmentmastery.com.
There's other ways you can contact me in the show notes as well. I look forward to speaking to you again soon.